everyone. Welcome so much to our live Ask Me Anything with TC Petty III for our My Father's Work Kickstarter campaign. We're so excited to be here. We really appreciate everyone's fantastic comments in our comment section. We just have been so overwhelmed by the number of backers who have come to tell us how much they're excited about this project. We've been excited about this project for a really long time. And so we thought it would be nice to come and share some of the background info about it, answer questions you have, get some behind the scenes info from our senior producer, Dan Bojanowski. Hi, Dan.
Hello.
And of course, the infamous TC Petty III, our game designer.
Hello.
So thank you both for being here. And of course, thank you everyone in the audience for being here. If you have any questions, that is literally why we're doing this. So please post those in the comments. Anything you think of, anything you've been wanting to ask, and we're gonna try and just answer some of the questions we've seen in the comment section, and also give you some cool behind the scenes info. So Dan, just really quick, tell us what you do here at Renegade.
Yeah, so my job title is senior producer of board and card games. So what that means is I'm kind of herding cats between the designers, the creative folks, the operations people, doing fun things like P&Ls, outlining the product specs, keeping those updated. I get to the cool thing is I get to take part in a little bit of everything. Working with the designers and making sure everything works, making sure everything's tested and edited, making sure all the pieces fit together, just kind of from start to finish, kind of shepherding the project through our system. One of the coolest parts is that I get to see the first offline samples of almost everything that gets shipped directly from China to me. So I get to play with things first, which is very exciting and fun.
I think to me, one of the coolest parts about your job is that you take this vision that a designer has, and it's really 99% of the time something equivalent to crayon drawings and a whole bunch of text and an awesome idea in their head. And you are the person within Renegade who says, what if this was a wooden meeple? What if this was a double layered estate board? What does the artwork look for that? Who are we going to have as an artist? You work with those teams and all those little tiny pieces in between. But then you also have to make sure that it makes sense for a price that would be good for our backers. So you could certainly say all of the coins in here need to be actual gold. That's right. How we're doing it this time. But you also are responsible for making sure that those things that you put in the box are not so expensive that people say, maybe I want to eat dinner again in the future. I probably shouldn't spend all of my money on this thing.
That's true.
So it's cool that you get to do that.
One of the things on this project specifically about that topic that I'll say is that, yes, you're right. Usually it comes not really fully fleshed out. It's just a PNP with paper and really oddly sketched out things that I kind of breathe life to a little bit. In this case, TC has been working on this game for like 6 years. I got to play it in prototype form.
Only 6 years.
Oh yeah, or more. But I got to play it in prototype form quite a bit. And TC, over the course of those years, kind of really modded out his prototype such that he had little rubber pieces for animals that all had different things. He had little glass jars, he had metal coins, he had metal gears and stuff that he had kind of sourced on his own place, on his own time, just for his prototype. And that was such a great experience. And it added to it that, yes, I did spec it out a couple of different ways. We tried a lower cost version that had just punch board elements and stuff for all those pieces. But it was just like, no, this is a deluxe game. It's an epic experience. And we want the gameplay, the narrative, and the components all to be epic as well. So, TC created the blueprint for that as well, that we just kind of saw through on the vision to get to where we are today.
I was just trying to sell it.
You succeeded.
So we're getting some really good questions in chat about the scenarios, and that is something we really, really want to talk about and will be our next topic. But before we do that, I did just want to introduce TC Petty III and give a short little story. So the first time I got to see this game, Scott Gata and I were at an unpub, I believe it was 5 years ago. And we were wandering around looking at games. We played Ex Libris when it was still in a prototype form. We played Sentient. And then the next table over from playing both of those games was TC taking up the entire huge 8-foot table. Every part of it was just covered in themes. And we were like, what is this crazy game going on over here? And TC said, you don't want to know about this. It takes too long to play. It's got this crazy story that needs an app. Nobody can publish this game. So keep walking. Don't waste your time. And of course, Scott Gata said, oh my goodness, that's a great challenge. Tell me about this game. I need to know more. And I said, oh my gosh, it's a Euro-style worker placement game. Tell me more. So we sat down and played for many hours and fell in love with it. So TC, that was when we jumped in as Renegade and said, we're really excited about this. But what's your story? How did this game even come to life before that?
Ooh, I'm trying to figure out like when did it come, like when was it an idea and when was it a game? I think the year previous is when it just started to become a thing. And my friends, I got to give them like 100% credit. Nat Levan and Austin. They both sat down and played this game for like 7 hours when it was a massive 4-act, like 4-generation thing that just I didn't know what I was doing, and they sat down and played it for like 6.5 hours with this terrible prototype. And from that point on, I was like, oh, they wanted to actually keep playing. There must be something here. So I kept working on it. But yeah, it's just, I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know why I decided to jump into something like this huge or ambitious with I don't know how to program anything. So I had to learn how to program to make the game.
Speaking of that, when we sat down that very first time to play, I was really intrigued because you had your laptop there and you were running this program on Twine, and you said this is part of the game. This is really important story feature of the game. And it was so interesting because I'd never seen anything like that before. So we're going to talk about the app in just a few minutes again, but I've seen so many questions about the scenarios, and the app is all about the scenarios. So let's talk about that first. So explain, this is a Euro game. It's worker placement. You're putting dudes on spots and getting resources. What in the world is happening with these scenarios? Explain that part to me.
Okay, so I mean, I can start dipping into the box, but I'll do this one first. I'll lift this one. So this is like your basic component box for a scenario, right? So you'll have this, and you'll have pages in whatever, I'll grab it. Watch me crinkle. Talk while I crinkle. The Village Chronicle. So this right here, I think some people, they saw the previews and they were like, oh, well, that must be the whole thing. But no, this is just one scenario right now. So in the end, we'll have, we've already unlocked it, right? We've unlocked both of them, right? Yeah, crazy. So we will have this book, which is right now double-sided, about 20 pages or so. This will be 3 times as large, a little more than that.
What is this thing that you're showing us? Tell us why this is important.
So this is the Village Chronicle, and what this does is this is your game board. This is where you're doing your worker placement. If I can get the little less whatever there, but hopefully you can see it. And on this, you've got spaces where you can place your different pieces. And the cool thing, I'm blocking my audio. The cool thing about this, I'm gonna try to do a shut up and sit down show view, where I'm like as awkwardly as possible showing it. what's on here is changeable depending on how the app goes. So as you move along, you might make a decision that causes certain buildings to be built, new different locations to become available. And as the game evolves, like you can see, even the background changes a little bit. You can even get to things where, oh, there's one nice dark and gloomy area where not really much is happening. And and you can see, like, depending on the scenario, there's different spaces to go to. They have different special abilities, different things that will happen depending on where you go. And this is all based on the story that you tell. So I think a lot of people, there was a few questions about how the scenarios work. And it's sort of like a combination of these two things along with the app, which, I mean, I don't really have a way to show that really right now, but the electronic portion goes along with this. So you would click on the electronic portion, you would take out your component box. These are only used in this cost of disease thing, and it includes, like, I mean, it could be anything. It's got like tiles and weird stuff in here. I don't know, you've probably seen them, but there's cards, there's weird tiles and stuff in that side of this. And that's only for the cost of disease. This whole entire book is only for the cost of disease. You'll see about, like, I don't know, 6 pages of this, and there's like 20. So yeah, depending on how your story plays out, it'll play out completely differently. But yeah, that's the basic thing. These are all components for this one thing. That's a scenario, and you plug that into your base game setup, and then you can just play the scenario. And there's 2 other ones. They'd come with their own box, come with their own pages, plug those in and the components, and that makes your game. You can't play like the base game alone. It has to have a story. Cool story.
So to expand on that a little bit, from my experience having played the game a few times, basically the way this works is, as TC said, you set up all these components, and then the app is going to ask you questions. Things like, okay, you're playing with some other people at the table, you'll maybe bid on being the mayor of the town, or it'll say who has the most animal body parts, or it'll just ask you these questions. And depending on those answers, that village, where it contains a lot of the spots where you can go as worker placement, will actually change. So if you have done something terrible to the butcher in town through the story questions, then maybe the butcher is no longer available to you and that spot goes away. Or maybe during the story, the church burns down and you no longer are able to go to that spot. So things that you choose in that app will affect the options that you have for your worker placement, resource gathering part of the game on those boards. And that's what that book is. It changes the boards, it changes those options. That's why the app is important, because you are using the app to make all of those choices, and it's giving you all of the story part of the game, why these things are changing. And that's why you need all those extra components, because things that didn't even exist in the game may become available to you because different action spots are now open that weren't there before. So hopefully that gives people a little bit better of an idea of why each scenario has so much stuff with it, because to just build the story part of that is equivalent to writing a novel. So if you think about, if you play RPGs, a 300-page RPG book is equivalent in the amount of stuff that you had to write to just make one of those 3 scenarios. And we've already unlocked all 3. So if you don't know what a 300-page RPG book looks like, here's a recent example. So this is Altered Carbon, just put this out, and this is about 300 pages, 320 or something. So kind of gives you a little bit of a clue of, the scenarios are freaking huge, and they will take you a bazillion billion years to get through all of them.
Yeah, and the sad part about all of it is that it's meant for you to just play it once and feel like that's it, you know. And so that's the worst part, is that you will play it, and you might play this a few times, and you might never see literally everything in there, and that's okay. You're not supposed to.
I would argue, so I do really like big, heavy Euro games. I like story-driven games, but I am that type of player who I'll play through some of my favorite games just once and then I'm done, and then I never play it again. I've already played this as a prototype more than I have played most regular games, just because I wanted to see more parts of it, because it's a really cool story. So anything else that you wanted to add, Dan, about the scenarios in particular? And then I want to answer a few questions about the app.
Yeah, so I guess I would add that, you know, as Sarah said, you go through the app and the storyline, and you're like, ooh, I wonder what would happen if we made this choice instead. Maybe next time we'll do this, or we'll work harder at this so we can achieve it or not achieve it or whatever. And even within those choices, there is variation. And maybe TC can expand on this a little bit, but like, even if we always make the same choices, there is still some variety within the app that would make it a different story as well.
Yeah, and it's tough to until you see it like do the thing twice. You'll it's tough to like really get a grasp on what it is. But it's basically just it's giving you as players the decision points to make, but sometimes it can change those decision points, right? Like what happens if you click on this thing the first game that you play and you're supposed to unlock something because you went up on the creepy track, right? For example, uh, the first game you play, it might give you one event. For the second time you play, it might give you a different one, and you're like, wait, but this is not the same as what I had before. But it will still give you a choice then, based off of that event or whatever it is, and that choice splits, and then you know how like most games they have like they kind of like oval out, they go like, okay, well, you're telling a story, you make a decision, it kind of goes this way, and then it comes right back to the main story and stuff. Well, this one just splits. Like at the end of the generation, it will guaranteed split, and then you will now be on this track to tell a different story than had you gone this way. But that decision that you made up here, that also splits. So if you made the decision here, which was also random inserted up here, you've now split, and because the direction of the town went this way, you'll get a different event now because the thing went this way, as opposed to if it went this way, you get a different event over here. But that was one of the random events that could have happened here, and then other things could have happened in. Yeah, so it starts getting really, really weird and complex.
He's a mad scientist.
It's pretty wild.
It gets really weird and complex, and it never comes back, right? You know, you never go like, oh, I'm in the second generation, now I'm this third generation, we're cheating, and we'll just reuse something that we already did. And it's like, no, it just goes off in its own direction, and it's yeah, it's I don't I don't like talking about it because it's too hard to explain.
No, that was good. We actually had a really good question in chat about how you balance the story versus making sure that the game was still a competitive, balanced Euro game. So what was your design philosophy when it came to these events telling a story versus providing boons to a certain player? It's a great question.
It's that is an awesome question, and that's the basic like why I was excited to do this in the first place, because my game design, one of the goals of this game design was I wanted to try to make a game that I wanted to play that had a story. And too often I would play games where there was a story, the story event would hit, and then you'd be like, well, I didn't want that to happen. I tried actively to not have that happen, and it still happened anyway. And I don't get anything for that. Well, that's stupid. Like, or you'd have an event that said everybody loses all this stuff, or everybody loses all their cards, and like one person had no cards, someone had like 5. And it's like, that's not fair. The game doesn't even know how many cards we have. The game doesn't know what we did, and it just sort of happens to you. And so I wanted to take away that feeling of the game happening to you, and give the players the drive. So if an event occurs, you're making a decision as a group whether or not you're going to engage with that event, right? So if there's a competitive thing, maybe you all go, whatever, and we let one person win the event, and they get like oh, we only had to do chemistry experiments. Somebody does 2, they win it, and then the game's like, oh, hey, how many chemistry experiments did you guys do? And you're like barely any. Cool, you're all punished except for that guy that did the chemistry experiments because they they were doing the right thing, or you're all punished, but that chemistry person gets a little bit of a bonus going into the next thing because they actually tried to help or tried to do a thing. So it with the app, it gives you this opportunity to be reactive to what the players are actually doing, and not just be a passive participant where you flip over a card and you're like, well, this doesn't really apply, but apparently you're ruined and I'm good, so that's good. I love this game. So fairness was really important, and making sure that when you're doing like these campaign or legacy games, that you feel like the decisions that you've made have a direct impact on the gameplay, and that your decision is not wasted because of something outside of your control happening. It should always
Yeah.
feel like you did it. You were a part of that thing. And yeah, wild things can happen, but like at least they happen equally. They happen fairly. At least that's the goal. That's the goal.
Players do have a lot of agency in this game, even though surprising things happen pretty often. That doesn't mean it's necessarily going to affect your overall grand experiment that you're working towards all that much, which
Exactly.
I think is a good thing. I never
Yes.
felt like I just couldn't do this thing I really wanted to do because this other stupid event happened. So no, that's good. We had another question, interestingly, about the events. Are the events played out and chosen procedurally, or are there random events that will trigger on a playthrough?
Random events on a playthrough. Okay, so there are both. Is that the
okay?
Is that the answer?
I mean, you are the designer, so.
So random events versus non-random events? Is that the main idea of the question? Yeah.
Mhm.
So there are, man, there's secrets that are not random. There are random events that occur during rounds to try to spice it up so you don't know exactly what random event is going to occur. So that will set up a player decision. Usually it'll give you like a thing that happens. The way that the app works and what's so fun about these kinds of things is that when I say something is random, I don't necessarily mean it's random in the sense that it's never going to happen. It's that it could happen, or it might not, or it will happen, or it will not. And that's all because of the way that you've chosen things. So like, yeah, so for example, like if you go down this one path in the cost of disease, there is, or actually no, this is not the I'm getting my things mixed up. If you go in the second scenario, there's a caravan that might show up, but it may not. Like, it's an event that occurs that depending on the decisions you've made before, it will either occur or won't, and then later that will cascade, and in the third generation it will either appear or not, but at complete random happenstance based on the decision you made before. Is that does any of this make any sense? Like, I think it just sounds like mad science. Like, yeah, that's there. All I could say
You're
is that
definitely a mad scientist.
all I
Dan,
can say
does
is
that...
I think people worry about when you have a strategy game like this. I think the main thing that I would be worried about if I were playing is this randomness input or output? I know this is getting into whatever heady stuff, but like, is this randomness that is just seeding something cool to happen, or is it randomness that just happens? And what I would say is the randomness here is really trying to be that thing that seeds the story and your creativity and your drive to continue down the path. So if something random happens, it's not to try to just be like, everything blows up. It's more, it was foreshadowed. You knew kind of what you were getting into with the decisions that you made before, whether it's story or resource or whatever based. And it is, the honest answer is it's both, but it tries to be as fair as possible when using that randomness. Use it in a good way, not in a like just whatever, it's random. It's seeding that thing. Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about this app, because clearly this is a complex game that uses the simplicity of the app to take away a little bit of that craziness. Because instead of looking through a billion books and scrolling through all sorts of stuff, the app just does that part of the story for you. So Dan, you've been working primarily with the app developers, and I know that we've had a ton of questions about how this app is going to work, the future of the app, and a lot of legitimate concerns, wanting to make sure that they can play their game for a long time, good questions like that. Do you want to talk a little bit about the app and the conversations you've been having with the web developer lately?
Sure. Yeah. So as you mentioned, this has been an ongoing discussion for quite a long time about how to make this the best experience for everybody, and certainly the concerns that the backers have raised over the last couple of days are valid, and we've spent some extra time going back and forth with the developers, making sure that we're answering those questions as best as we can. And if you're watching this and you haven't seen, just today we did make some big announcements, or not big announcements, but some announcements about future support that are important. Namely that we plan to continue to support this through various OS updates and all those things. We commit to that. And if and when we don't foresee this, we don't want this to happen, but if there comes a time when we're no longer supporting the app, we have committed to making these files available for the app to the general community, so that your game will continue to be playable. So I think that's very important to the community. I think that's important for the health and long-term viability of the game, and we're committing to that. So yeah.
And really, I mean, this is a game generations in the making, and about generations. We want this game to last for generations. So we're working on that. We got it figured out.
Yeah, and the response we've gotten so far has been great to the game. So I mean, as far as more content, that's definitely something that we're talking about, making plans for, and starting to look at. Just because it's not just 3 scenarios, we want to do more.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So I don't know if you're going to have to go back and ask the web developers about this, but I'm going to throw this wild question at you really quick.
Okay.
Will one instance of the app run the game for all players, or will there be an option for players to run the app synced with each other? I know we've had, like, our Search for Planet X app does the syncing, but I don't know if that works for this one, because it is a much more shared thing that you're kind of passing around, at least in my experience.
My understanding of what the current scope of what we're doing is that it's a one instance of the app that is shared among players, but I can look into that. For things like the narrated, the voice integration and stuff, that might be weird if you have things that are quite out of sync and you have a narrator that's talking in your ear and from both directions. But yeah, there are some instances in the story where you're supposed to pass the app to a certain player, and they're supposed to receive a secret message, and then they can share or not share. They can make decisions about that. So that's an interesting question, and one that I don't have a final answer for you, but I believe the current implementation is a single use.
That's very helpful. So one thing that we have been talking about over the course of this campaign, and we've seen a lot of interest in, is this app being available in some different platforms. So when we announced this at the beginning, we announced that we're doing Google Play, Apple App Store, and the Amazon App Store. So Dan, I feel like you might have something you want to share to our backers about that.
Yeah. So one thing that we've heard our backers asking about repeatedly, and with good reason, is will there be a web-based version of this? And we've been talking to our developer about that and the possibilities of that. And we're happy to say, I think this is the first time we're saying it publicly, but this is going to be added as a stretch goal for the campaign, one that we really hope and think that we're going to hit. But yes, that will be a new stretch goal that will be added for a web-based campaign, a web-based version of the app players can use. It will have the same auto save functionality that the apps will, so there's no drop off there for worries of not saving your progress or anything like that. So yeah, we're excited about that.
Yeah, I really like that it's saving your progress, because this is a big game and it would be really sad if you were not able to complete it. I know our current prototype of the app does have that challenge because it was not made by fancy app people like the ones that are making our final version of the app. And we have had it crash and not let people finish their game. And they've been very sad about that. So that was a really important thing to us. It needs to be able to save your progress. So we've got that in the current form of the app, and that'll be on even the web version, which I'm very excited about. So we've talked about the app. We've talked about scenarios a little bit. I saw another good question about the glass jars, those little bottles. So TC, what is up with those? Why do those exist?
They're really fun.
They are really fun.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know why Renegade decided to keep them. Like, I can buy them from Michael's,
cool.
right? Like, that's not a problem. But like, yeah, the logistics behind that just seemed insane to me. So I'm super happy that it's there, but I'm just amazed that that's a thing. I've never seen that before.
Yeah, like I can speak to that a little bit. I mean, like I said, TC's original prototype had them, and it was just something so cool that we had to give it a try. And you know, there were some initial concerns about breakage and is this reasonable to do? And I got the initial samples in, and they were great. I mean, they're nice size, they're fun to play with. You can drop them, you can do what you need. We've had no breakage in shipping. They're just really nice and fun to play with. So yeah.
So what do they do? Why
What do
why
they
are they
do?
in the game? They are very cool. Wow, that's awesome.
They're fun to play with, and they're a resource. So if you saw the little spots on the board, right, you go to pick up these chemicals, right? So this represents chemicals, or I guess in this case, like a formaldehyde jar or something like that, right? But it just represents the chemistry, main chemistry ingredient, and I think it's really cool for doing that. I mean, the other ones. So if you're picking up other things, ooh, that one's really cool. Let's find them. So you got your gears, right? I mean, if I can show them, they're all different gears. There's gears in there. Gears are fine, but the bottles are cool. The coolest one for me is the bodies, because originally, unfortunately, I did like in the prototype they were just meeples, but I think these are just super cool. But yeah, there's like little coffins.
I love the little coffins.
Which are, again, they're in the campaign, but I'm just showing them, but they're cool. And at least you get a size reference here more than anything else. And there's just these different screen prints on them. It's really neat. And somebody was asking at one point, are these like, because they're so shiny, are these acrylic? But they're not. They just, I don't know.
They're wood.
It's wood, yeah, and whatever finish they have on there, I don't see this really as chipping off. I'm kind of like more
shiny.
likely I'll hurt the corners than before I'll actually get this paint off. So yeah, very cool. But yeah, these are the resources that you'll pick up during the game to fuel your fiendish experimentations. Whether you're doing a early little experiment with like mobility, or doing a and what is the reverse fire extinguisher as your main
yeah. And one thing I would note about the ingredients, there's those 4 main ingredients: the bottles, the chemistry ones, the gears, the bodies that TC's shown, and the 4th one are the animals.
Oh yeah, animals.
And there are, you know, have we unlocked all the designs, Sarah?
Oh, I think we were making them bigger now. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, these are compared to the other 3. They were a little bit smaller than the other ones, and the other ones have such a great tactile experience. I'm happy that we've unlocked that goal, or are working on unlocking that goal to make them slightly larger, so they're comparable to the other ingredients that you're going to be picking up throughout the course of the game. But yeah, if that goal gets unlocked with all the 15 designs, there would be 15 unique shapes and screen prints for the meeples, or that are just really cool. Frogs and owls and elephants and all sorts of fun things.
It looks
Sadly, I
like we
don't.
did unlock that. Yeah.
Sadly, I'm not. I don't think the final, if when we make them bigger, I don't think they'll fit inside those those glass vials anymore.
They may not.
Oh no.
But
But they do
the
vary in
cubes do.
sizes.
The
Some of
cubes
some of
do.
them
I
will
know
be
that.
So, Dan, I actually have
some
another
of
question.
the animals are bigger than others.
That's
Yes,
true.
Go
yes.
ahead.
So quick question in our chat about an undo button in the app. Is that something that has been spec'd in? Like if you click something incorrectly, can you go back? It's a
Yeah,
little bit different with this one, right?
yeah. I don't. TC and I were chatting about that earlier today.
Yeah.
You know, there are back buttons built in currently, but that's different than an undo button that undoes a decision. That's something that I don't know that's spec'd in right now.
I think we're just both like what our biggest concern, even whether it's an undo button or something like that, is a way for you to just be able to check and make sure that like you're on the right path. Like if something, because obviously if you clicked on the wrong button, you can hit a back button. Oh, oops, I hit the wrong thing. You can go back a little bit. But if you go any further and you're like, wait a second, were we supposed to do? It would be nice to have a way to double check that. So something like a log or something, but an undo seems like a little bit drastic. But something like that, I think, fits what you're probably asking.
Yeah, confirmation button. That's a good
Yeah, like they're
idea
saying.
from
Yeah,
chat. Yeah, because there are things that you find out. Like once you have that information about what happens when you make a choice, it's not necessarily a good thing to be able to go back and undo that choice.
Yeah.
But making sure you're not accidentally clicking things is a whole different story. So yes, we do have a working version of the app, but we're in the part of the testing where we're making sure that all these little final details make sense and work correctly, and doing lots of play testing on that. So things like the undo button are definitely on the top of our mind right now. So those are
Yeah,
really
and the work we were rushing to hopefully have it viewable and for this Kickstarter, and we're not quite there, and we didn't want to share it as a partial just yet. But as we go on, we'll be sharing things when we can. You know, there's lots of minor things that we want to add to it, visual upgrades, and adding pictures of the components that it's asking you to go grab, and these types of things that are just user interface things that we're looking to make sure work really well in the finished product.
Yeah, and I think just on that note, we have actually seen a lot of really good ideas and suggestions and comments in the comment section on Kickstarter. And that's really the reason why we're here. Of course, Renegade, we're a big enough company that we can put out a game if we want to. But this one, we knew that there was so much going on that we were excited to get feedback from the community before just throwing it out into the world and saying, this is what you've got, take it or leave it. And so we're really enjoying this experience of doing the Kickstarter and seeing your feedback and getting to chat with everybody here. And so we are really working hard to be able to announce a few more little surprises, nothing humongous. And just to get it out there right now, we don't have any more scenarios in this game. They are an enormous amount of work. TC would probably not make it through the next year if we made him do another scenario. So we're not going to give him a heart attack. That we will not add another scenario as a stretch goal in this campaign. But we do have a few other things that we have seen after looking at the prototypes, after seeing all your comments, that we are working really hard to be able to announce. So hang in there.
Adding another scenario would significantly delay the release of this. And we don't want to do that. We want to get this out to you by, I think our timing is February of next year. We might even be able to beat that if there's logistics cooperate with us, but that's a crazy world right now. So
logistics have not been cooperating with us. So we did build in time based on our current new world shipping challenges. So yes, that's where we're at right now with the app, with extra things we're going to add, with new stretch goals that we're thinking about, and with new scenarios. That doesn't mean that we won't eventually in the future make new scenarios. We may not. We'll just have to see how everything shakes out, but we will not be adding new scenarios for this campaign. We did get another really good question having to do with the app, if there will be a tutorial of how to play. So do either of you want to comment on that?
That's a great question. And again, something that TC and I have talked about is some form of a tutorial walkthrough of the game using the app. I don't know that we're ready to say yes or no if that's going to happen or if that will be at launch. But that is something that is being discussed, and I agree that it would be a great use of the medium to be able to teach the game.
Yeah, and I would like to. I'll just add on to that. I think just being able to have the visual references in the app and getting it to that point where it is nice and polished, I think that'll just make it so that automatically it's going to make it a lot easier for you to just play the game, like just play, find the pieces, do all that stuff. So yeah, I'd agree. I think even some preliminary ideas have been thrown back and forth on something like that, but nothing confirmed. It's just once we see what the polish of the app is in its finality, we can get a good idea as to whether that's needed, or we could just build a little extra in there, so it might just be easy enough to just tell people what to do for the first round or two. You never know.
I will say,
Yeah, it could
having
be
played
something
through this with you, TC, you're a wonderful teacher, and I know that it helps that you know the game already, but I did not think that this was a crazy, crazy complex game. It mostly feels familiar, but fresh in a sense that I'm really thinking about all these choices. I'm excited to be able to try and make my third generation huge experiment. And there's a lot of little decisions in the meantime, but none of it is going to be like, oh man, I really have to wrap my head around this like 12-step process that's really difficult to understand and bizarre. Nothing like that in this game. All of it is very intuitive. So
yeah, and
I love
hope
tutorials, but honestly, I'm not sure that this is one of those games that really needs one.
That's very true, and thank you. Yeah, no, I never know, because you're stuck in the weeds for so long on the design. But I would hope that it's at least thematically, like as you're teaching it, you can go, well, the reason why the angry mob has gotten you now, you can't go into town.
Yeah,
that makes sense. You might expect that there might be something worse than that, but we've tried it, and going any further than that gets really nuts. But but yeah, it's just one of those things. Like intuitively, you kind of know that something bad's about to happen, whatever that is. Hey, cool.
Awesome. So this is hopefully a quick question for Dan. Which components are final and which ones are still prototypey at this point? Do you want to just pull a few out of your hat that you can think of? I will, while you're thinking of that, I will say, if you watch some of the previews, really one of the cool things about this game, I think, is that you can take the miniatures that we provided in the box. There's 24 beautiful miniatures of 6 different designs, and you use these bases to designate which one of the different roles will have which character sort of plopped in there. So the role is what matters. So for example, your spouse can go to town for you, but your servant has to stay in the house. And so only action spaces on your estate will be available to certain roles versus the ones out in the village. So those little player reams, the things that you put your miniatures into to designate those roles, if you watch some of the previews, the colors that we chose at the very beginning may have changed. So the red and yellow ones, we modified those to be a little bit more thematic. They are now more of a maroon and a purple instead of red and yellow. Honestly, it just looks so much better on the board. So those have changed. So that's one thing that I thought of. Anything else, Dan?
Yeah, I mean that's there's a lot that's close to final-ish, but we are considering things like we've seen some of your comments in the comments section of the Kickstarter, and we're making some considerations. As Sarah alluded to, there might be some things that we're going to tweak. I would say that the miniatures at this point are final. We are, to make we've already done the molds on those, and so to make changes on those would be again, would delay us a significant amount of time. So we're happy with where those turned out, and those are final. But everything else is at the 90 to 95% change, or 95% stage, and we're just ready to put the finishing touches on them.
Just wanted to, somebody asked in the comments, there are art pieces for some of the vanity estate upgrades. And what's cool is kind of like as you're playing, that's the thing. Hey, there's a little thing. We'll be making the text a little bit larger after some feedback from there, so that you'll see a little bit larger text. There you go. But
Nice.
but on the backs, you'll see there's different pieces of art, and this helps too because these are all kind of end game things. So you can put it into your estate, and then at the end flip them over, and you can score your points and everything. So there's stuff like a moat,
hedge mazes.
Hedge mazes, those kinds of things. So to that answer that question, while not all of them are going to your normal hey, I've got an estate upgrade that's cool, you're going to need to see that text, and I think it's more important to see the text than it is to have a cool piece of art down there, especially for they're only this big. They're not massive.
Yeah, for sure. So that great question about which components are final also fits in with a question about upgrading some of the components like the wooden cubes. We are not ready to share some of the changes that we are going to post as stretch goals here soon, but watch for those because there may be some good surprises coming. Or at least some nice little ones. Also, another question in chat about player aid cards. They're wondering how many of them per player. I assume there's one player aid card per player, Dan?
Yeah, so I can touch on that. So there is one player aid per player, and they are tarot size. They're nice and big. On one side is kind of an icon guide with some reminders. TC is flashing it up there with some commonly used icons, which is also on the back of the rule book. The other side, however, is awesome. The other side has the turn sequence and has many very useful reminders for your first couple games. You're definitely going to want to have this next to you to say, okay, at the start of a round, we do all this. Start of a generation, we do all this. End of a round, end of a generation, special reminders. It's all very condensed and nicely laid out on that card. Very useful player aid, one of the best I've seen in a game. So
that's awesome. And this, of course, the player aids and all of the other cards in the game, if you put them in sleeves, if you want to do that, they will still fit in the game trays. That is very important to us. So we made sure that that was the case. And if you're wondering what size sleeves you should order to go along with your game, it is in the FAQ section already. That'll be up long after the campaign ends. So at any time when your game arrives or right before then, you can go and check in the FAQs and we'll have all the card sleeve sizes in there and ready to go for you. So yes, we love card sleeves. They're awesome. All right. Another person asked, who are your favorite characters in the game? And by characters, I mean estates. Currently, they are all the same. Yes. Each estate is the same.
Yeah, everybody starts with the same estate stuff. We'll have you'll start with an estate, start with a storage shed. They're really deep in this box. I'm not going to grab them.
Okay.
But yeah, the each one just you'll start with your basic setup and storage shed so that you can get some cool stuff on the first generation. But yeah, nothing asymmetric. Nothing like that. Characters wise, if you're looking at miniatures and stuff, I think my favorite, I got to pose for one of them. I did
I didn't even know that. That's fun.
I did the mad scientist pose, so.
Well, that's appropriate.
This is the classic non-binary pose for a character. I don't know, man. These are I think though I like Victor Frankenstein the best. Let's see if I can get him because this was based off of the Kenneth Branagh Victor Frankenstein. So the Mary Shelley's one, which that movie I really like, except for the ending where everything explodes in flames, and it's really funny. It's not scary at all. It's just really, unfortunately funny. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but Kenneth Branagh with Frankenstein can't end his movies very well. He does the same thing in Hamlet where they throw a sword from like 300 feet away and it's like, ah, and it's the worst.
I
Kenneth
think I need
Branagh
to
movies
go
are
and
great,
watch all of those classic movies again before this comes out. It's going to be fun. So we have had a few more people asking about some ideas about adding unique art to the estate boards. I am just going to say we have seen lots of very good comments in the comment section, and we will announce things in the future. That's all I have to say about that. So keep posting all those great ideas. We love to see them. All right. We have a question about story progresses. Let me read this one really quick. Okay, here we go. As the story progresses, is it a narrative change or a rules/mechanic change? So this is going to go back to what we were talking about at the beginning with the Village Chronicle and how it actually gives you new available spaces and the places you can go, the resources you can gather, the things that can happen do change during the game. So do you want to talk about that a little bit more, TC?
Yeah, so this is, I think, of course, like the randomness question, the answer is both. It does both narrative and gameplay changes, and the narrative drives the mechanical changes as well. So not only are you going to turn to a new page, which will give you new spaces to go to. That's like the simplest, I think, honestly. Like turn to a new page, cool. There's new things to do. The more complex is you'll have an event that gets introduced. Maybe you're competing this generation to build a church by being the most charitable. Maybe you are working towards a scientific symposium, something like that, and someone at the table who's in last place may have chosen what field it's in, and so these are the kind of things that now the mechanic has changed. Now there's something there. Even like secretly there's like a social deduction mini game in some cases, and like there's the app changes stuff, so like you'll have secret messages and you can make secret choices that affect other players before they know what they're doing. So like stuff like that can happen in the game. It's not necessary. This is why the app is part of the requirements and not one of those like if we were to do like the printed out, having it able to remember what you've done and be reactive to a secret decision is really, really difficult. So just being able to make those secret decisions, having it remember it and not having to flip through a billion pages to try to figure out how that resolves is super helpful.
Somebody was asking, can the map change midway through a generation?
Oh, of course. Can it change mid-turn? Yeah.
It is quite adaptive.
It just depends on the situation. I mean, it's like, that's the thing. I try to explore as many possible ways that I could mess with people. I try my best not to be too to be very specific about stuff like that, right? Because if you have your pieces all on this board and mid round you have to flip it, like it gets really annoying. But that spoiler, that does happen, and it's just for a good reason, right? So anything can happen.
It's not all that. It's like not a normal occurrence. That would be like a special thing.
It would not. Yeah. You're not doing this every turn. That would be really annoying because you'd just be like, just chuck all the pieces off to the side, do it again.
Yeah, as a normal course of the game, it'll happen between rounds, so you're not missing the pieces. But TC's saying that, anything's possible.
Yes.
There are a lot of different, in fact, 13 trillion different story variations that are possible. So yeah, we cannot tell you what story you are going to experience or what things are going to happen to you because TC is a mad scientist and he created this crazy monster. With that though, there is a good question here. What player count has been working best for playtesting? And I saw this question in the comments a couple days ago too. Have you done a lot of playtesting with 2 players? Because I know with worker placement games, sometimes it's not quite as tight with 2 players. So that's a good question for you, TC.
Yeah, so for me, it's like when I've been playtesting, it's usually at conventions, and I am somewhat of an odd duck. I'm unique in the sense that when that I've been doing the unpub conventions and going to playtesting with other designers. So when I playtest, a lot of times I'm turning people away. So I have playtested this game surprisingly at 4 players more than any other count by far, for sure. Um, and that's been good because it allows me, because the hardest thing about a worker placement game for sure is when you have overlap, you got to know that like your overlap is not causing the game to just break, because if people place pieces, like you got to be able to just do something on your turn. Something has to happen. And so the game guarantees that something will happen on your turn, even at those higher player counts. And the 2-player game, which I've done less of because of that, the 2-player game actively changes the game to make sure that anything that was multiplayer, anything that was like 3 or 4 players guaranteed, is altered just enough to make it so that there is competition between the 2 players. And that a lot of people are like, oh, well, then if it's like a vote, then it'd just be a bid. It's like, no, sometimes instead of it being a vote, it might be that like now you have this side little storyline that tells the 2 players, hey, you're going to be competing over this thing for the right to make that decision that would normally be made by a vote. So it's altered a little bit. If you play 2 players, you will get a different experience than if you play with 3 and 4. So again, on top of on top of the other things that you get with this, you are like legitimately getting a curated 2-player experience that makes sure that you're still getting the richness of the storyline, but altering it in such a way so that you don't feel left out or don't feel like this mechanic is not working because it's 2 players only. So yeah, more game. Play
And
it with
this
2 and then play it with 4, and you'll have 2 different games.
And this is yet another reason why it had to be an app. I mean, this would have been such an annoying experience with a physical book, to be honest, because either you would have had to have a separate whole book that's just for 2-player only, or every time it goes to a decision in the book, it would ask you, are you playing a 2-player game? Which takes you out of that immersion that you really get when you're playing with the app. So just another reason why we committed to TC from the very minute that we sat down at that table that this had to be an app game and that we would make that happen. So it's definitely important that this strong integration between the app and the board game is happening the way that it is.
And I would also point out that if you are interested and haven't seen it already, the Man versus Meeple playthrough is at 2 players, so you can kind of see how that's going to work.
Yeah, definitely. So we are close to out of time for today. We do have just a couple last questions. And if there's anything really quick you want to throw in chat, we will do our best to get to that. And I know some people, I know Scott and I saw Matt Holland from the Renegade staff are in there answering questions too. So any last minute stuff, throw it in there. We'll make sure it gets answered. But just to get through a few more of these, there's a question about the achievements that are planned for the game. Do you have anything you want to say about that, or will that be for an update for the future?
TC, do you have anything you want to say about that?
I'll leak some stuff. I have no skin in the game, other than it just being cool to say things. Yeah, so I mean the idea is, I think originally, if you've seen any of the previews, right, people talk about like the endings to the game, and one of the things that we definitely wanted to do was catalog when you have completed the game, and the ending that you get for your scenario gets logged. And at the moment, I don't want to step on any toes, but all I know is that like the plan is to try to get that app integrated to endings so that those achievements show up with the endings for the game.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, and and hopefully we can get your points tabulated and keep track of all that, so you can look at the ending that you got, and hey, if you've unlocked all the endings, that's super cool.
Nice. I am excited about that. That should be fun. And one other just sort of comment from Puppet Stream 55 that I appreciate is that this feels like a constantly changing legacy style game, but with the ability to easily reset, and there's just nothing else like that. And that's very true. I think that's what really struck Scott and I when we sat down at that table that first time and played with UTC, was that I just can't think of anything else that does this. And I play every single campaign game I can get my hands on because I love them. And there's just nothing else that does this story in the way that this does. I love like Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle Earth and Forgotten Waters and Mansions of Madness. All of these games are fantastic and I'll put them on my table anytime I can, but they all do this story in either a different way, like either sort of on rails where there's some random events, but like you said, it always goes back to that same storyline, or just a bunch of random events that don't really have a story, but it's still fun because you get to play as a pirate or something. And those are great, but they're really different. There's nothing that's quite the same narrative experience that this gives you. So I am very, very excited. I love that everybody came out today to chat with us. We're so happy to have you here as part of our campaign. We really actually would not be doing this without all of you. We wouldn't have the same experience. We wouldn't be making this game much, much better without all of your comments. So keep posting in the comment section. We love to hear from you. Send us messages, ask us questions. We'll do our best to get back to you and keep reading all of our updates as we give you some more upcoming fun stuff. And yeah, thanks for being here. Thanks, Dan and TC, so much for spending some time this afternoon.
Yeah.
It's really helpful to get your insight and a little background knowledge. So yeah, thank you both. Awesome.
Thank you.
We'll have a great afternoon. We'll see you all soon. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.